Jaya Kunja Vihari Gopajana Lala Jaya Giridhari Gopajana Lala Jaya Giridhari Suranandana Raja Janarangana Suranandana Raja Janarangana Namuna Tira Lana Sari Jaya Rama Jaya Kunja Vihari Jaya Rama Jaya Kunja Vihari Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Prabhupada. Jai Shri Garuda Govinda, Krishna Balaram, Logira, Shri Gonitai, Srila Prabhupada ki, Srimad Bhagavatam ki, Jai Garuda Premanandi, oh glorious assembly devotees, oh glorious Sri Guru and Sri Gauranga. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. From the third canto. Chapter 2, text 3. 2, text 3. Yeah. Sakatam sevayatasya kalina jara sangataha Vishtuvatam pati bruyad Bhaktupado anushmaran Sakatam sevayakasya Kalina jara sangataha Vishtuvaktam pati bruyat Bhaktupado anushmaran Sakatam sevayatasya Kalina jara sangataha Vishtuvaktam pati bruyat Bhaktupado anushmaran Sa Urva Gatam how Sevaya by such service Tasya his Kalena in course of time Jarasham invalidity. Gataha, undergone. Krishna, asked for. Ritam, message. Patibruyat, just to reply. Bhatu, of the Lord. Padu, his lotus feet. Anushmaran, remembering. Translation report by His Divine Grace C.C. Bhaktivedanta Goswami Maharaj Prabhupada ki. Translation. Uddhava thus served the Lord continually from childhood and in his old age. That attitude of service never slackened. As soon as he was asked about the message of the Lord, he at once remembered all about him. For transcendental service to the Lord is not mundane. The service attitude of the devotee gradually increases, never becomes slackened. Generally, in old age, a person is allowed retirement from mundane service. But in the transcendental service of the Lord, there is no retirement at all. On the contrary, the service attitude increases more and more with the progress of age. In the transcendental service, there is no satiation, and therefore there is no retirement. Materially, when a man becomes tired by rendering service in his physical body, he is allowed retirement. But in the transcendental service, there is no feelings of fatigue, because it is a spiritual service and is not on the bodily plane. Service on the bodily plane dwindles as the body grows older, but the spirit is never old. And therefore on the spiritual plane, the service is never tiresome. Uddhava undoubtedly became old, but that does not mean that his spirit became old. His service attitude matured on the transcendental plane. And therefore, as soon as he was questioned by Vidura about Lord Krishna, he at once remembered his Lord by reference to the context and forgot himself on the physical plane. This is a sign of pure devotional service to the Lord, as will be explained later on in Lokapila's instruction to his mother Devahuti. It's leading up from the last verse. It's explaining here Uddhava. He was a natural devotee from his birth, which is amazing. I mean, it is said that one of the duties in our spiritual culture, we learn that one of the duties of spiritually minded, Krishna-conscious married couples is to produce virtuous, spiritually enlightened children. So this science of creating spiritual progeny or elevated children, imbued with spiritual qualities, who are natural devotees, who want to serve Krishna with love and devotion, it's a great science. And it's called the Govardhana Samskara, and it involves several factors, actually. Especially, it involves the spiritual consciousness of the parents at the time of conception. And also involves things like the health, the Guru's blessings, and the blessings of the Vaishnavas. Astrology, calculations, people calculate according to astrology the best time to procreate a children. Because ultimately, as far as consciousness goes, the child, even though he's born with the aid of the genital, the child is born actually from within the heart. It means, according to the heart condition or the consciousness, a certain soul will be attracted to take birth. And it's amazing because, when we see our Krishna-conscious children, it's actually, it is said that practically the highest birth you can take in the material universe is to take birth in the family of Vaishnavas. So these children that are born into the Krishna consciousness movement are very special souls, actually. Very special souls. We don't know where they were in their last life. Maybe they were devotees that didn't quite make it back to Godhead, or they were yogis, or, advanced spiritual practitioners. A very special birth, actually. And of course, Uddhava, he wasn't just a natural devotee. He was a Nityasiddha, a Mahabhagavat devotee. They actually come from the spiritual world, sent by Krishna to teach us by their personal example how to become devotees of Krishna, how to practice devotional service. And generally they're born in Vaishnava families, like we have Bhaktisiddhanta, Srila Prabhupada, Maharaj Pariksit, Uddhava, who is Krishna's cousin. Even we see Mother Yasoda, Mother Sachi, who was an incarnation of Mother Yasoda. So many amazing personalities that Krishna sends from the spiritual world. And, we understand that these Mahabhagavats, these Nityasiddha devotees, are always in the liberated position. They never fall down to the region of the material atmosphere. Even though sometimes we see they come down to the material plane to execute the Lord's mission, spreading Krishna consciousness. So Uddhava, he was always expressing these deep feelings of ecstasy out of his intense love for Krishna. Tears of separation were always coming from his eyes. These are displays of the devotees and the most advanced devotees. And as Prabhupada mentions in this verse, that the Nityasiddhas, they never forget Krishna. Actually, even Prabhupada said that to one. He said, I never remember a time when I forgot Krishna. And it's said that even 24 hours a day they're thinking of Krishna. Even when they're sleeping, they're absorbed in remembering. They cannot forget Krishna, actually. They cannot forget him. So I was mentioning, when Uddhava was asked by Vidura to explain topics of Krishna, he remembered them immediately, in great detail. Krishna's pastimes. And as we go on further in this verse, we realize that he understood, he was able to recall in great detail Krishna's pastimes from his very birth to when he became like king of the Yadus in Dwarka. So we may not be Nityasiddha devotees, eternally liberated souls, but we're categorized as sadhana siddhis. We may not be liberated from birth, but we develop a tendency for devotional service by association with other devotees, and ultimately with the pure devotees like Srila Prabhupada. And Prabhupada always used the example of Narada Muni. In his previous life he was the son of a maidservant, but his maidservant was during the Chaturmasya period, the 4 months of the year. Generally the sadhus, they don't travel. They just stay in one place and they focus on reading and chanting and performing austerities. So these Mahabhagavat devotees, they were staying in their house. And Narada, who was just the son of a maidservant, he got to serve these Mahabhagavats. He was eating the remnants of their food. He was hearing topics about Krishna. And in the next life, he got this extraordinary position of being Narada Muni, who is the spiritual master of many very exalted personalities. And Prabhupada actually mentions that in the ultimate conclusion, there's no real difference between a Nitya and a Sadhana Siddhi. It means that everyone can become a Sadhana Siddhi by associating with pure devotees of the Lord. And it's, So this verse and these other verses here too, they talk about these things, it's like, it's interesting. It's, devotees of the Lord. And of course it's talking here about devotional service. Brad and I was talking here about devotional service and how it's, there's no satiation in performing devotional service. Some people, I mentioned this in the village one night, that, some people say, when we go on Harinam, they say, how you guys, you just sing the same song over and over again. Can't you sing another song? You know any other song? And we explained to them, and this is part of the mysticism of Bhakti Yoga and the mysticism of chanting, because we can go on chanting this same mantra over and over again, day after day, year after year, and we never get tired of it. It never becomes stale or hackneyed. Rather, the more we chant, the more our hearts become purified. And our taste for chanting just goes on increasing. It becomes like a stream of sweet nectar, just giving us so much pleasure. And this is because it's not a material sound. It's a spiritual sound that comes from the spiritual world. And it's only by the mercy of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu that we can have it. Otherwise, we can't have it. He made the impossible possible out of his causeless mercy. And also, reading Krishna Katha, you can, as I said, you can read the same beautiful stories about Krishna and his pastimes over and over again. They never become stale. They're always ever fresh. And devotees, they just develop this insatiable appetite that they just want to read more and more. They want to hear more and more about Krishna. And anyone that is a dedicated reader of these scriptures. So I was just hearing a lecture by Gadamba Karana Swami. I think it was in Radhadesh, he's saying, And then we have so many books, and they're all sitting there in all the ashrams and houses, but people don't read them. They're just collecting dust there. Occasionally, someone may pull out a book and read something, but it's not much of a habit. And Prabhupada actually, he said one of the only criticism I have of my devotees is they don't read enough. They don't read my books. And I know myself, it's a fact. You get caught up in your day, you're busy doing service, running here, running there. And you've really got to strategize, actually. And I just know one devotee, he was complaining to his guru that he didn't have enough time to read. And so the guru sat him down, and they worked him out a timetable. What he does, how much time he spends eating, sleeping, doing this, doing that. And actually, it is found he actually had so much time. He had so much spare time, but he was just wasting his time. And time moves very quickly. You notice that. Before you know it, the day's gone. It's just in our materially conditioned state, it seems like time's moving slowly, but actually in reality, our whole life is just a flash in eternal time. But it's, we need to, and I know Srila Prabhupada and many of the gurus, they recommend it to read at least 1 hour a day. And you can break it up, 20 minutes. You can read, maybe after breakfast or before you go to bed, you can read some. And actually, when you're reading, and I found this, when you read aloud to yourself, it's really powerful. It's really powerful. You can really absorb it. And it's, when you read that Srimad Bhagavatam for 1 hour, it's just like, wow, you just feel incredible. It's so powerful. And as it's mentioned in the Bhagavatam, when you're actually reading about Krishna, you're actually accessing his direct association, directly associating with him, which has a very purifying effect on the consciousness. And the devotees, they just want to read more and more. They can't hear enough about Krishna. This is a sign of how much we're advancing. How much we want to chant and read and do service. I know. Devaramita Swami, he said, when devotees are going to the temple president and saying, I haven't got enough service, can you give me more service? Then you really know the temple is going places, it's really... So it's, it's about a stepping out of the comfort zone. It's nice just being like in your room and you're just kind of like, relaxing and you're doing some reading and just having a nice rest and checking out the latest stuff that's coming on in the world news on the internet. You can spend hours just keeping up with the latest current affairs. But, reading and chanting's okay, but we need to, we should try and step out of our comfort zone and really do some service for Krishna. And I know there's so many devotees who are doing so much amazing service, and they're always busy in Krishna's service. Like we see, Sringa Chaitanya's always racing around trying to manage those kitchens. I know that I managed kitchens for like 40 years in ISKCON, and I know it's a busy job. And in the early stages, it's and this service and this chanting and this reading, and it becomes like, as you go on in Krishna consciousness, it becomes more and more nectar. As old people generally in the world, they don't have so much to look forward to. They just grow old, they get bored, and they get really lonely because no one comes to see them. The kids are all busy with their families, and they just dwindle and just eventually die. Whereas, devotees, we've got, just having that association of devotees, it's incredible. It's amazing that we live in a society of devotees. We've always got support, friendship, this and that, Because in the early stages, sometimes we're a bit up and down in our spiritual life. It's natural. It's to get over that first stage. I know when I was a young devotee, I was always thinking, I can't wait till I'm like 50 years old and I've got through this early stages and I'm just cruising in my spiritual life. In the early stages, it's like it's like a graph. You're up and down. So 1 minute you think you're like an incarnation of Lord Chaitanya, and the next minute you're thinking, maybe I'll just give all this up and just go back to my old life, in the material world. But after a while, it kind of balances out, and you become really steady in your spiritual life. And of course, as we get older too, the whole idea is we want to sort of take a step back from the world, especially grihastas, take a step back from the world and family responsibilities and work on that internal spiritual development program. And, Prabhupada's mentioning here about devotee, there's no retirement. And we have many great examples here in New Govardhana. It's like Vasu and his wife. They're still actively doing service. Akotasi, she's like, how old is Akotasi? She's, 83, and then she's out there on Harinam, giving out flyers and, just chanting and dancing on the kirtan. And the Gudi, he's down there. You wouldn't believe the Gudi, he just sits there all day, just in his bhajan, just reading, just reads one book after the other. He's Braja's greatest customer at the bookshop. He just reads the books and then he just gives them out to people. It's amazing. And also, we have, people like, as they're getting older, like, we have, Sadhana's a great example, She's not so old, but she's just here every day, Mangalari, doing service, serving the Vaishnavas. We've got Patapana in Sydney. He's like doing so much amazing preaching down there, setting up all these programs, and he's been doing that for so many years. And even though, and of course, actually there's the one devotee, Bhagavatam Mita Swami from South Africa. And he's a devotee who trains leaders to take up managerial positions in India. But now he's got this program where he gets vanaprasthas, retired couples who and you notice older devotees that have been around for so many years, have had so much experience in so many fields, raising children, running businesses, so many different talents and things. And rather than just being left by the wayside, what he does, he brings them in. He brings them in. They take, and the temples support them, they accommodate them, and they take up positions of, supporting the younger devotees, helping as advisors and management, and they've actually become, in many parts of the world now, they've become a great asset to our movement. Whereas normally they just, what do? They just, they have to look after the grandkids, and they don't really do much. Of course, we have so many swamis there. Older swamis who were like traveling. I remember Jayapataka Maharaj, he had like 180 international flights a year or something. It's like he was just traveling and preaching and just, he was the Qantas's most frequent flyer. Even when he was late for the flight, they'd stop the plane on the tarmac and they'd usher him out there in a special little vehicle. Put him on the plane. And so I know, Kadambakarna Swami, once we were on the Sunshine Coast, I think, we were doing programs. And he actually turned, he was going to talk to the brahmacharis. He said, I don't have any personal agenda. My life is just on the line for the preaching movement, and we see these devotees, they're so selfless. They're just giving themselves, giving out instructions, giving their love, giving their inspiration, just constantly, and they it's incredible. And of course, one of the classic examples of all is, Srila Prabhupada. He's not just he's not just talking the talk. He walked the talk. Prabhupada in his old age, he was like 69 years old and 70 years old by the time he got to America. And if everyone was thinking in India, were thinking he should just stay in Vrindavan and do his bhajan. He's happy there. But no, Prabhupada was, he was catching trains here, there and everywhere, trying to get all these books printed. And then he just, he making all these arrangements to get onto the steamship, to get to America, to fulfill his spiritual master's desire to spread Krishna consciousness throughout the world. No one in their old age, he had no money. He had the Indian equivalent of $8 in his pocket. Imagine, $8, had a bag of muesli, a couple of trunks of books. He had no support awaiting him. And there he was in his old age, traveling over to America, no one else would have gone, but he was fearless. Actually, there's one story of one man. He was an associate of Prabhupada, a distant associate, but he when Prabhupada was waiting there on the dock with his little suitcase, and he was just waiting there to board the ship. And he had his beads there, and he was just chanting. And that man, later when they interviewed him, he said, Prabhupada, he just looked like a lone fighter. He was like fearless. And he went to incredible difficulty and trouble, and he suffered a lot actually. He went to America, and for so long he said, I was wandering the streets like a nomad, just like a street person, hardly even knowing where he was going to live or how he was going to survive there. But he did it. And it is said, he did that because he loves us. And this is one of the symptoms of someone, a pure devotee. He loves Krishna so dearly and so deeply. And that love for Krishna is reflected in his compassion and love for all living entities. So yes, we want to give our whole life to Krishna, and there's so much to look forward to as you get older in Krishna consciousness. It's, actually there's one writer, and he was writing about a lot of the disposition of old people. And he wrote this thing, he said that they become like feverish, selfish little clods of ailments and grievances, just complaining at the world that is not dedicating itself to making them happy. I mean, if you go out there on Sankirtan and look around at old people, and sometimes you'll see that they just become these miserable, selfish little clods, just griping about this and that and everything. And then, Prabhupada once, when he saw them in the West, when he saw the old people playing the bowls, just wasting their time, he actually started crying. And it's a fact. The old people, and I know because I go and visit my mother sometimes, and just, her whole life is just, basically, it's just in front of the TV, the television. The only time she talks to me is when the commercials come on. And it's like, that's it. They're just absorbed in their TV, their newspapers, reading these mundane novels, or they're just sitting there by the ocean with their fishing rods. You see them there, all day, just sitting there fishing. Well, they're so bored. They go down to the pensioners club, play some ping pong. Have some cup of tea and some little cakes. Talk about the old days. And some people, they get so bored. I mean, my grandfather, he was so bored when he retired that he went back to work. He worked on till he was like 75. And even I meet people out there who work till even into their 80s. Because they've got nothing else in life. So we don't want to be like that. But even sometimes we see, devotees who have left Krishna consciousness or who are not so active in Krishna consciousness. And I even met one devotee and he said, well, all that stuff that you guys do, the chanting, the Mangaladis, the Harinam, reading the books, I did all that. I've done it. I don't need that stuff. I've done it all, I'm still a devotee. But, I did it all, But actually, you see, they're really sincere devotees. They're still active in Krishna consciousness. They keep contact with Krishna consciousness. They all try and give something to Krishna. Amongst Krishna's pastimes in Vrindavan, there's one story about a woman. Her business was selling fruit. So she came to Vraj and she was calling out, "Oh, inhabitants of Vrindavan, if you want to purchase some fruit, please come, please come." So when baby Krishna, when he heard that, immediately went to his mother's pantry and he took some grains from his mother's kitchen, and with his little hands he went to barter with the fruit lady to get some fruit. So while he was hastily rushing to the fruit vendor, what happened? Most of the grains he was holding in his little hand, they just fell to the ground. Nonetheless, that fruit vendor happily filled Krishna's hands with as much fruit as he could carry. In exchange, Krishna mystically filled her fruit basket with a big pile of precious jewels and gold. So Krishna is teaching us in this pastime that anything offered to him with love and devotion, he can easily reciprocate millions of times over. So Krishna is also telling us that with love and devotion, we should try and give something to him from one's source of income, or, from one's, give some time, some energy, some nice words, something from our income, then our life will be successful. Ultimately, we know Krishna, he doesn't need anything from anyone. He's perfectly satisfied. Yet, if we give to him, it's for our eternal benefit. And therefore, we should sacrifice some of our energy. Of course, Bhakti Yoga in Krishna consciousness, it's a very open process. It's up to each individual to determine how much he or she wants to be involved, how much one wants to give. It's not forced. The essence of bhakti is love, and love requires freedom. Love cannot be forced against our will. So loving devotional service to Krishna means surrendering to Krishna using our free will. And what happens then, it's only really then that the flower of bhakti or loving devotion within our hearts will just nicely grow and blossom. So our Vedic literatures, they teach us how everyone can live happily and comfortably in this world, and at the same time gradually attain perfection while moving progressively at one's own individual chosen pace, according to one's nature, according to one's commitment, according to one's motivation. So spiritual life, it's a very personal thing. Krishna doesn't interfere with our free will and independence. He leaves it up to us to make our own choice. In the beginning, one may start by simply just chanting Hare Krishna and reading some of the books. As one becomes more enthusiastic to make advancement and get more involved, we have so much going on here. We have the temple programs, we have festivals, preaching activities, a whole range of service options. How we can get Krishna's mercy and blessings by pleasing him, by our sincere efforts, sacrificing our energy, our time, our resources in his service. And of course, our congregational members, people living out there in the world, can also share their Krishna conscious experiences with their family, with their friends, neighbours, work colleagues, preaching in a nice, positive, friendly way. You can't be too fanatical when you're talking to people out there. People you don't want to get labelled a fanatic. You've got to just preach according to time, place, and circumstance. So this bhakti culture, it's a culture of sharing, of helping each other on our spiritual journey in life. We share our realizations, we share our friendship, we share prasadam, we share our knowledge, we share the holy name, and we share our opportunities to get to do service. It's a sharing of Krishna consciousness. It's part of our culture. And because the heart of such relationships is a spirit of service to each other. It's a very important. And ultimately the inspiration to serve and love Krishna. So as followers of this bhakti yoga path, we're all united as one family in one purpose, which is to follow the path taught by the Vaishnavacharyas and to go back to Godhead. So our bhakti yoga culture, it embodies this universal truth that is shared even amongst most spiritual and religious people, that one is best situated in life when one is in this mood of giving from the heart, And Krishna tells us in Bhagavad Gita, without sacrificing, without giving some of our time, our energy, our wealth to the devotional service to the Supreme Lord, one can never live happily, either on this planet or in this life. What to say of the next life? So we have to, and of course in Bhakti Yoga we learn this process of giving from the heart, and how the highest giving, which yields the highest benefit, is give to the Supreme Lord, and also to give to saintly persons. You know, when we give from the heart, what happens is we become purified, we become nourished, we become enlivened, especially when we give to a higher cause, giving to Krishna. You know, generally in the materialistic world where people are driven by passion and ignorance and just view the world and live in this self-centered, egocentric, competitive, selfish, exploitive way, the mood is simply how much I can get for myself, which leads one to becoming more and more covered by ignorance, embedded in greed and lust and desire and selfishness. Also, one becomes embedded in intense longing and frustration and anxiety. Just, it's all about me, how much I can get for me. And ultimately, Krishna tells us in the Bhagavad Gita, ultimately there cannot be any real inner peace or happiness if one simply cuts off his relationship with the Supreme Lord and views oneself as the independent, supreme enjoyer, controller, proprietor. We see that in the world, even people that follow some kind of faith, you know, like some Christians and other people, you know, they're generally only exposed to the external features of religion. They never really know or taught what is the essential purpose of religion, which is to develop our love and understanding of the Supreme Lord. You know, people are simply taught to see God as their order supplier, you know, the one that can fulfill all their material desires and free them for the reactions of their sins. And so many people we see in the world are in this mood of bargaining with God. You know, you give me success, Lord, and I'll believe in you. You know, you make this person love me, and I'll stop drinking. Give me good grades at school, and I'll worship you every day. If you cure my disease or illness, you know, I'll go down to the temple or the mosque or the church, and I'll make a nice donation. In this way, people pray in this mood of bargaining with the Supreme Lord. So according to the Bhakti school, you know, this type of mood of relationship with the Supreme Lord it's a good step. It's in the right direction. And it may inspire one towards religious practice and a moral life, but it's not the ultimate relationship. You know, as one's faith and knowledge of the Supreme Lord develops, we stop trying to make deals with Krishna, and we start looking for a deeper exchange. You know, in the spiritual world or in spiritual consciousness, one is in this mood of just totally giving out of spiritual love without any expectation of anything in return. Now, this is the complete expression of our natural propensity to experience love. And Krishna, he's that perfect person who we can fully give ourselves to, because only Krishna can accommodate everyone's loving endeavours perfectly, and he'll always reciprocate perfectly our love. Whatever little thing we do in devotional service to try and please him, he'll reciprocate. So, yes, we see that love is not just a sentiment, but it's a devotional work. Sacrificing our energy, our time, our skills, our wealth, our intelligence, and ultimately our very life for the pleasure of the Lord. And the more we serve him, and sincerely give to him according to our capacity, now he appreciates that service. And the result is he blesses us. We become more spiritually realized. We develop more, and we become enlightened. We become more happy. We become more peaceful. We become more satisfied within ourselves. And ultimately we can enter more and more into a personal relationship with him and just realize his eternal friendship. And of course also, whatever we give to Krishna, only Krishna can accept our offerings and reward us in such a way that we're fully satisfied within ourselves. Jai Srila Prabhupada ki, Srimad Bhagavatam ki. Does anyone have any questions? Any quick questions? Jai Srila Prabhupada ki. Okay.
You mentioned that Balaram was always with Krishna in the forest.
Oh.
Yeah?
Yeah, that's mentioned in the scriptures. Sometimes Krishna is known as Dauji. Dauji, if you go to Vrindavan, they always call Krishna Balaram Dauji, which means the older brother that looks after the younger brother. So it's mentioned that in that mood, even though Balaram knows that Krishna, no one can defeat Krishna. He's supremely powerful. But still, out of duty, as the older brother, he always wants to be with Krishna in that mood of protecting Krishna as his older brother.
Okay, my question is, so when Krishna's with Radharani, what's Balaram doing?
Sorry?
My question is, when Krishna is with Srimati Radharani, where's Balaram? Is he with his gopis at that time, or what's he doing? I'm just wondering, if you mentioned that Balaram's always with Krishna, but when Krishna is with Radharani, Balaram's not there.
No, I said when he's in the forest. When he's in the forest with the cows and, when they go into the forest, round Govardhan, herding the cows, going to the pastures, and Balaram's always there with Krishna, But about 11:30 in the morning, it is said that, Krishna, he tricks the boys, and he slips away to meet Radharani and the gopis, and he performs his midday pastimes there in Radhakund and the surrounding forests with Krishna and the gopis. But Balaram, the cowboys, they must just be out there herding the cows and eventually bringing them home.
But isn't it also Krishna also extends himself, right? Like when he does Rasanas with the gopis, it's Krishna, but he's everywhere at the same time. So couldn't it be like that? That when he's having that pastime or whatever, at the same time he's also Balaram.
Sorry?
Krishna expands himself, right?
Oh, yeah.
So it could be
He does
one
that.
pastime, and at the same time the other pastime with Balaram.
He does that sometimes. Yeah, he can be in many places at once. Even when we're talking about the Spring Festival recently, Krishna expanded himself into a dozen Krishnas who were swinging with the different gopis on the different swings, but they couldn't see. By his mystic power, they all thought it was just one Krishna with them.
Yeah.
So Krishna, he can do that.
Because he was everywhere at the same time.
Yeah. But he does. There's a story. He has a certain schedule each day, a certain pastime schedule where he's performing different things at different times. Jai Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Why doesn't Balaram have any gopi dogs? Or any of the white marble deities?
Oh, he's wearing the gopi dogs today.
Balaram? Where?
Huh?
Balaram doesn't have any gopi dogs.
Oh.
Krishna does.
Yeah.
But none of the white marble deities.
I don't know. I don't think, I don't know if they put the gopi dots on Balaram, but sometimes you've got to be careful that you don't stain the marble. It stains, might stain, I don't know. But I think I've seen gopi dots on Balaram. It's up to the dresses, you know. Sometimes, I know when I used to dress deity, sometimes you run out of time. You know, because there's a lot to do, you know.